Hello, Stephen.
Hola, Susie. How are you?
Great to see you here in this virtual space.
Igualmente.
So why don't you tell me a little bit more about you? What's your name, your title,
Oh,
and
my
where?
dear. No, no, no,
Yes,
no,
all
no,
that.
no. Mi mamá me enseñó, my mother taught me ladies first. So, por favor, why don't we start with you, my dear?
Okay.
So, my dear Susie, my dear Wonder Twin, why don't you tell me your name, who you are, and, we could get into a little bit about your story.
Okay, we will go back and forth for sure. My name is Susie Jaramillo, and I am the president and chief creative officer of Encantos. And I am an artist, an entrepreneur, a storyteller, and a proud mommy of two. How about yourself?
Excelente. Well, I am Stephen Wolfe Pereira, and I am a very proud Dominican American, born and raised in New York, but most of my family is still in Santo Domingo. And I am the CEO and co-founder of Encantos. And I am also a very proud husband to Nuria Santa Maria Wolfe, and a very proud father to two little wolf cubs, Sebastian and Sienna Wolfe.
You added so much color that I left out. Um,
You're the artist. You have all the color.
Whatever. I will say I now I need to give props to my husband, Carlos Hoyos, and I will also add that I'm from Venezuela, but I'm a weird mix. So I'm Venezuelan, Ecuadorian, Irish, 100% American, and I would say that all of that culture plays into what I do every single day.
Exactly. But tell me a little bit about your journey, because I feel like one of the things that people probably don't appreciate is the incredible background that you have as an artist, as an illustrator, as a draftsman, as a storyteller. And, certainly it kind of starts with the, incredible opportunity that you had to go to this place called Pratt. So maybe you could give me a little bit about your story kind of pre and post.
Well, so the interesting part about my story probably is that I'm an artist that finds herself very much in an entrepreneurial setting. So I have always loved art. I've always loved to draw and to paint, and I did go to Pratt. And I found myself in that conundrum of, okay, how can you be the best kind of artist that you're meant to be? How do you best fulfill yourself as an artist? And there's no one out there to teach you, like to really coach you on like the different careers of creativity. So figuring out what my role was as an artist and how it came into play with my community and what kind of spokesperson I could be for my community. All of that was something I figured out much later on in life. Today, I am very cognizant of the fact that I am most fulfilled as an artist when I serve my community. And right now that means in telling stories and creating visual universes and really elevating and inspiring my community, especially children of my community. And so that is how I found myself in this situation today as co-founder of this beautiful company we call Encantos, really seeking to tell those stories that haven't been told and to build these beautiful universes and these wonderful characters that will inspire this next generation of kids. How about yourself?
Well, we'll get to me in a bit, but I want to continue on this thread because you are really interesting, because you're not just an artist, you're also an entrepreneur. And in fact, you're a second-time entrepreneur. And I feel that true creatives, they could be on the science side. Certainly engineers are always lauded and they're celebrated in the tech community as the creative and maybe the driving force of a company. But on the art side of the house, they're also creative. And I feel like they need to be equally as lauded and celebrated. And so help me understand how you were a first-time entrepreneur and how you actually entered into the entrepreneurial fray again with Encantos.
I know, fool me once, right? So, I'm a person who likes to make things. And I discovered that not only did I like to make art, I also like to build teams and make companies and see businesses grow. And for me, it was always really important to build out a vision, a project from start to finish, and not just be one little cog in an overall arc, So I love the chance of finding a need, a story, a market that needs to be, serviced or fulfilled, finding that those stories that need to be told, and then figuring out how that story can be told, and then seeing how I can get it to so that the most people possible will get that story and will get it, and it'll land home and hit right. So for me, all of those pieces just come together in the shape of an entrepreneur. I don't know how else to explain it.
But
When
most
you're an
people
artist,
would, kind of just take the safe path. I mean, think about our community, think about Latinos and actually starting a company. You need capital, you need resources, you need to understand, how to really run a business. And you didn't have any of that experience coming out of
well, some of us just don't know how to take the safe path. Some of us are just like, okay, I really want to do this. And if I don't do this, I'm going to be really mad at myself for not doing it. So I really think you have to listen to that inner voice inside of you, because that's the voice that God put there. And if you don't listen to that inner voice, you're really, truly doing yourself a disservice. So it really comes to be as simple as, like, really, what are the skills that God gave you? Are you using them? What's the need that you see? Okay, if you don't follow that path, you're really not listening to that voice inside your head that's supposed to guide you, that's supposed to open doors for you. So, and I've come to terms that, like, a lot of my friends that went to Pratt with me are like famous illustrators or famous this, that, and the other. And for me, it's more, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, and I love to draw, and I love to paint, and I love to tell stories. And I think you can be more powerful when you can pull more people together on your ride and inspire other creatives to tell stories with you, right? And then you create a movement. So it's just it's a more satisfying thing for me as an artist.
Awesome.
All right, Stephen, now talk to me about your why. We know that you're in this business with me. Now we know that you could be making a ton of money in private equity, or be a fancy schmancy CMO or CEO somewhere else. Why did you walk away from all of that and say, no, I'm going to do something really, really hard and join forces with this, crazy artist lady and build the entertainment, education, technology company of the future?
Well, since you put it that way, look, this is something where, kind of my journey, having started my career in finance. I was fortunate to do a program called SEO many moons ago, and that was really my first exposure to the world of finance. But I ended up working a lot in tech. And so I was focused on technology, media, and telecom very early on, whether it was at the Blackstone Group, Salmo Smith Barney. I did Latin American private equity, and that kind of sucked me into the world of technology. And I basically have been working in tech since 1999, when I was at this little startup called Akamai Technologies, and I joined them until about like 2005. But for me, it was really trying to understand, how do you take all these experiences and really create something that is going to be about legacy? I mean, think about the moment that we're in. Ruth Bader Ginsburg just died, and it wasn't until her, late years, she became a global icon and a rock star in her 80s, right? But she was doing all of the work, and she really has impact, and think about her legacy. And I think I've been helping folks either build their brands or help companies grow. And I really wanted the opportunity to build something that would be ours and have our legacy, to really give back to our community, to give back to, the folks that we really want to lift up, the voices that we want to be heard. And it really probably hit me the most when my first child was born in 2015. And that's certainly when we started talking about forming this company. But for me, it was, wow, I now have a child, and that's one of those life moments, right? Where you're just like, how do you want to live the rest of your life? What is your purpose? You talk about listening to that voice inside. I certainly felt that I had skills, but maybe they weren't really being harnessed. And all of the superpowers that I have, how can I really bring them to bear to create something that I know can have impact? And I just felt that we have both, whether it's you and Carlos or Nuri and myself, we've had this collection of experiences. And if you think of anyone that could really create an entertainment-driven ed tech company, really focus on bringing blended learning, digital and physical products together, wrapped in a subscription service, I felt like we actually had all the experiences collectively to do that. And so who better than us? If not us, then who? And it just felt that if I did not do this, I would have been really upset, because no one was going to do it. If we're just being really honest, nobody cares about our community more than us. No one's going to save us. There is no Prince Charming. No one is going to care if, on one extreme, our kids are being put in cages, to the other extreme that we have all these numbers where 20% of the population, 30% of the population, nobody cares. So we need to care. We need to create our own businesses. We need to create the products and services that we want to see. And I really feel that this is going to be a renaissance for Latino entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think we need to believe in ourselves and believe in what's possible for our communities. I know that, and part of it is training ourselves to really become masters of our craft, right? To make sure that we can compete with the best in the business, to become masters and then turn around and face our community, and with those skills that we've acquired, do the best we can possibly do for our communities. And I think that's certainly part of my inspiration behind what we do with Encantos. I'm definitely, I hunger to see beautiful content, beautiful products that showcase all that I know that our cultures are, right? And that our people are. And sure, you'll have these really big companies that will do like a one-off where they celebrate Latino culture for like a second, right? And I feel like we're so much more than that.
A second, we get a whole month. We get to celebrate Hispanic heritage.
And that's when they tell you about all the Hispanic people that they hired, right? Like literally, that's what Hispanic heritage campaigns are. It's for corporate America to tell you about the Hispanics they hired. Anyways, I really think that once and we know that we need to try harder, right? I fully, if you're Black and brown, you definitely have to aim for a higher bar. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that, in the sense that absolutely aim for the highest bar you possibly can. There's nothing wrong with that. Then go out hard charging and don't doubt yourself, right? I think it's also really, really important that, one, we know that we are a community that expands beyond titles. So we need to support each other and know that we're a part of a broader movement, right? So that's really, really important. Don't be in it for yourself. Be in it with everybody for everything that we can accomplish together. And number two, don't be afraid to break the mold and do things differently. One of the things that I would say that we're doing differently is that we're taking this concept of wonderful entertainment and combining it with education. And everyone kept telling us, like, are you education? Are you entertainment? Choose a lane. And we're like, why do we have to choose, right? The best storytellers are entertainers with superpowers. I'm sorry, educators. Sorry about that. The best storytellers are educators with superpowers. Why can we not just harness the power of storytelling to really inspire kids to learn, right? And so once you take that idea that we can truly create strong entertainment and strong characters that lure children in, we can then use the different platforms available to us today to layer in the learning. We have a really powerful proposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the idea of 21st century skills and how needed that is right now in our communities.
Yeah, I mean, look, I gave a TED talk about trying to achieve escape velocity in your career and how important that is. I also did a different talk about, the role of how this is the AI century and how AI is actually going to decimate Black and brown communities. And so I feel like this incredible sense of urgency that we need to wake up as a community, because this is not a joke, right? Like, if this is the AI era, anything that can be automated will be. And so there are going to be tons of jobs that are going to go away, and they are not coming back because of automation, because of technology. And it's going to impact your tío, your tía, your prima, like, it's going to impact our communities disproportionately. There was a study by The Atlantic that said that of all the communities being affected by automation and AI, the Latino community was at the top of the list. So this is something where I feel this incredible responsibility, because I've worked in tech, we know what's coming, and we need to kind of sound the alarm bell, not to freak people out, but to get moving, to get motivated. And especially when it comes to, our children, they need to learn the 21st century skills that are going to help them thrive, not just survive, thrive in this AI era. And that really comes down to this paper that was done by the World Economic Forum in 2016 that identified these 21st century learning, literacy, and life skills. And the reality is these are the things that are not being taught in schools today. And I think if you ask any parent or, just anyone, hey, do you really feel that our education is teaching kids what they need to learn to be successful today in 2020? It's a resounding no. I mean, it took an epidemic to wake up the education industry so that we realize, wow, how outdated this is, how behind the technology curve they are. So when we realize that you need to learn creativity, you need to learn critical thinking, communication, collaboration as learning skills, or the next generation of literacy skills, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. You need to learn financial literacy. You need to learn environmental literacy, the greatest crisis for Generation Alpha, those kids born after 2010, you know, and certainly STEAM, but also life skills. How do you learn grit and resilience? How do you learn social emotional skills that are going to really help you have the empathy and understand the mindfulness that you need to be successful? And I feel like any parent wants that for their kids, but they're not going to get it in school. And so our thesis is that they're going to get that through brands. They're going to look for brands to bring into their home that are trusted, that they're going to be able to have these brands do enrichment and supplemental learning for their kids. And I want Encantos to be the home of those 21st century, you know, skills. We will be the trusted partner for our kids and families and educators going forward.
Absolutely. So rapid fire, because we're already 5 minutes over. So why not, let's just go for another 4 minutes.
Why not?
So, all right. So what are like the 3 most important pieces of advice you would give to young people out there looking to start a business, looking to raise money, looking to prove that they have a viable concept?
Right. So it sounds cliche, but the first thing that you need to do is understand what is your purpose. I'm a big fan of this Japanese concept called Ikigai, Ikigai, and it's this wonderful concept that you actually combine what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you could get paid for. And when you have that intersection of those 4 dimensions, that is your purpose, your reason for being. And so you need to understand, what is it that you want to do? Because you cannot live someone else's dream. You cannot just kind of do something because you think it's going to be, oh, some short-term economic gain. You really have to have this grounded in purpose. And if it isn't being driven by purpose, it's just going to be this false narrative, and it's not going to help you sustain the good days and the bad days, because you'll have all those up and downs, especially as an entrepreneur. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is just start. You know, we could talk about all the hypotheticals, but the beauty of this day and age right now is you have all of the tools. You don't need to wait to come up with some, you know, financial model and have all of these hypothetical situations to, you know, kind of align. Just go out. If you have an idea for a story, for a product, for a service, launch it. Start getting customer feedback. Go direct. There's never been a more powerful time for you to test and learn with an audience. You have all the platforms that are out there. And what people want to see, especially venture, they want to see that you actually have a minimal viable product. The best way to do that is to show that you have people interested in what you are building, that they're talking about it, and that they're buying it. You want to show that type of engagement, and you have all the tools. So I would say just start. Put something out into the universe and get feedback directly. And then the third thing is be really smart about how you maintain control and ownership. These are the things that nobody talks about in venture, and especially within the Latino community. How do you maintain control of your company? How do you not dilute yourself to the point that you actually don't own anything anymore, that you gave away control? Understanding how important it is that every time you raise money, you're giving away your company. Someone else now has that ownership stake. So if you're really thoughtful of every single dollar that you spend, you get to be in control of both your destiny and your company.
All right, so I'm going to add in 3, and they're going to be a different 3. On top of all of Stephen's brilliant advice, here are 3 from me. 1, surround yourself with only amazing people, only really, really good people that you can trust. If you have a doubt, if you're not sure, that's a no. Okay, only people that you really, really trust. If you're still, you can have lunch with them. If you're still not sure after the lunch, that's a no. Number 2, don't try to do everything yourself. Find a partner that you can trust. It's really important for you to know what you're good at. Odds are you're not going to be good at everything, right? So if you find a partner like Mr. Wolfe here, who has an amazing set of skills that complement your own, do it with a partner. If you can do it alone, fine, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But find people that you can work with that you trust. What else can I tell you? Number 3, and most actually, again, I said a little bit of this in the beginning, only put out the best possible work that you can put into the market. You will be judged against the best in the category. No one's going to really want to back you or fund you or invest in anything that you're doing unless what you're doing is truly breakthrough and truly distinguishes itself from what's out there in the market. So please just try to go above and beyond and be stellar, be different, be head and shoulders above the competition, and that is where you will win. And don't stop trying. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Don't do it if honestly, if you can get a full-time job and be happy, don't do it. Get a full-time job and be happy. Being an entrepreneur is so much harder. So only
harder, and you should also just have a longer term perspective. You should go into it. If you're going to start a company, assume you're going to be doing this for 10 years. Are you going to make a 10-year commitment?
Yes, it's a 10-year commitment, and you won't make a lot of money in the beginning. So do you really want this? Don't do it for the money. If you're being an entrepreneur for the money, that's the wrong reason, right? So do it because you have a vision that you really need to see come to life, and you have the grit and the resilience to see it through the highs and the lows and the stomach crunching moments, and there are plenty of them. And if you're able to do it, there's nothing more rewarding in the world.
It's so true. And Susie, I gotta say, as a Latina, as a female founder, are there any tips that you would give to the Latinas that are listening right now?
When the going gets tough, wear lipstick. That's one. Every time you walk into a meeting, just think like, what would an entitled white man say, right? These are other things that help. Know that there's another dude walking into the same room that you're walking into that has an idea, probably half as good as yours, that doesn't doubt himself as much as you're doubting himself. Fear is a luxury that you absolutely cannot afford. Just go for it, mijita. That'd be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Wonder Twin.
Thank you, my dear. Ciao.
Ciao.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jack Hidary. Great to be here with you today. They've asked me to speak about how I became a moonshotter. So let's dig into it. I started life in Brooklyn, New York. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was a fascinating place to grow up as a kid. I grew up about 10 minutes from this dilapidated roller coaster that you see here on Coney Island. And looking at these kind of structures growing up raised a lot of questions for me. Questions around the rise and fall of communities. How do communities suddenly build these kind of structures and then let them go into decay? Another structure right near this roller coaster is this parachute jump. And yes, people back in the day before my time, before I was born, would climb up to the top of this parachute with an elevator, and they would jump off in a parachute, but the parachute was attached to a rope, so it was safe. And this was a great amusement, and lots of families, I'm sure, came and enjoyed this. But by the time I was born and grew up and walking around Coney Island, this is what I saw, this structure in decline. And so it raised a lot of interesting questions and challenges around, why do these communities rise and fall like this? What is the essence of community? Why do 3.5 million people in Brooklyn initially build something like this and then let it decay? And so it drove a curiosity in me to explore other parts of New York City as well. And the subway was my ticket to doing that. The subway in South Brooklyn is not underneath the ground, so it's not actually a subway, but it's actually elevated, so we call it the L for short. And this is a typical subway of that time, covered with graffiti. I love the graffiti. I thought it was really colorful and interesting. In fact, later on in one of my apartments, I had graffiti artists come in and paint one of the large walls with graffiti as a homage back to my childhood. And the subway was a wonderful way to get around the city, to meet different cultures. I was able to visit all 5 boroughs and to find all kinds of interesting things in museums and restaurants and cultures and festivities and all kinds of theaters. And so it was a real window onto the many cultures of New York City. In New York City, we have more than 500 different languages spoken, so many different people from so many different parts of the world. And so it was a real wonderful education. I really enjoyed growing up in Brooklyn. And then I had the opportunity to go to Columbia University. I started to study brain sciences and philosophy. And I studied at this Morningside Heights campus, but also was able to take classes at the Uptown campus at the medical school. And I took wonderful seminars in neuroscience with Eric Kandel, who went on to win the Nobel Prize in neuroscience, and many other luminary professors. Really opened up my mind to a fascination I've always had since I was in high school about how the brain worked. And that's one of the early moonshots I started to start to tack into, which is this wonderful organism we have, the brain. How really does it tick? While I was in college, I also had the opportunity to study abroad. I studied in France for a while, but also studied in Bogota, Colombia. And I lived in Bogota for this period of time with my cousins there. And I attended university in Javeriana, in a university that had a special program for people who already knew how to speak Spanish, but wanted to go deeper into the culture in Colombia and Latinx culture in general. And it was a wonderful experience. I got to become much closer to my cousins in Bogota. And I got to visit also Barranquilla, a city where our family used to be. And I got to visit many, many parts of this beautiful country. And so that was also a wonderful exploration and experience for me during college days. After college, I had the opportunity to get a fellowship at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, near Washington, D.C. And the building, the second building you see in this picture, behind the first building is the building where I worked, Building 10. And here's where we did research in functional neuroimaging and mapping out the brain. And we really start to dig into the relationship between biological neural networks and artificial neural networks. How do we, in fact, understand how the brain works? And the brain seems to work on some kind of distributed set of nodes. We call them neural networks. And also we can build them in computers as well. These were early days in building artificial neural networks, but we were going back and forth one to the other. And I really was very excited to be part of this whole new field. While I was doing that, I started to have a lot of ideas about new companies I can also launch. Since I was a really small kid, I always wanted to start a company. I had been programming since the age of 10 when a family friend had a computer that he gave to us. I was able to learn how to program on that computer, very early days of coding. And I went to coding camp for 3 summers in a row when I was in high school. And so by the time I got to university, I'd already learned how to program many of the languages. When I was thinking about different companies I could launch, thought about really serving the IT professionals themselves. And so launched a company called EarthWeb with my brother and a friend, Nova, and then was able to acquire this company, Dice, very small company, about 8 people. And then we built EarthWeb and Dice into Dice.com, which is still going very strong today. And that was a really wonderful lesson in how to launch something from a small idea in my second bedroom in my apartment to something that became a publicly listed company, and how to scale ideas from beginning to something that impacts millions and millions of people. So that's part of moonshotting as well. Not just having the idea, but also implementing that idea and impacting so many people. I also became involved at that time in X Prize, a nonprofit, a charity that brings together many innovators and says, what are some key challenges that face humanity today? And how can we solve those challenges by putting up large prizes that incentivize people to attack these issues? And this is the first X Prize you see here to launch to space twice in 2 weeks with a vehicle that you create yourself. And in fact, of 21 teams, 1 team did it and won the $10 million. And Elon Musk, who's on the board today of X Prize also with us, credits the X Prize for space for inspiring him and others to go into space as a private sector entrant. And that's one of the biggest breakthroughs that I understood about moonshots from this experience. It's not just about the technology breakthrough, it's also about the psychological breakthrough. The breakthrough in terms of knowing that, no, it's not just governments who could do space. Private sector can also have a huge role to play in space. That psychological breakthrough is key to moonshotting. Here's a picture of the winning entrant that eventually was licensed by Richard Branson. And in the next few years, I'm sure he'll be launching Virgin Galactic, which is the intention with this particular vehicle here, to allow many people to experience space, not just the initial participants. X Prize also started to attack other issues and other moonshots, and so really got a lot of experience around how we can relate to these big challenges. At this time also, I started getting involved in microfinance. I joined the board of Trickle Up, a wonderful charity and nonprofit that serves women around the world, providing them the support they need to start their own business. And this is also a moonshot of how do we create sustainable futures for billions of people around the world, and doing so in a way that is creative and engaging and empowering to the women that we are serving. And so I learned a lot from trickleup.org about moonshots and the social positive impact they could have. Years later, I was asked to join in on the X team, and at Alphabet X have learned a tremendous amount as well, and have been building teams for various moonshots at Alphabet X. And that really draws upon many years of thinking about all kinds of moonshots, biological moonshots with the brain, computer moonshots with artificial neural networks, and the many moonshots of X Prize, the moonshot of Trickle Up, the moonshot of impacting the world in so many different ways. And not just the ideas of the moonshots, but also the scaling. How do we impact in a sustainable way to do that? And these are some of the grand challenges that my team and I think about all the time, and other teams at Alphabet think about as well. Finally, another moonshot that I now more recently got involved in is quantum computing. I was always fascinated by quantum mechanics since I was a kid, studied it in college, and now have a chance to really implement that with the future of quantum computing, and had the opportunity to write this textbook, which is now used in many universities around the world. And it's a wonderful feeling to hear from students all around the world that they're using this textbook and really enjoying the fact that they can get into this moonshot of quantum computing. So in summary, what I would say is that I've been very lucky, very fortunate to have a childhood where I could explore all around and meet different cultures, different languages all around me, growing up in Brooklyn and New York City. I had the opportunity to travel and study abroad as well, living with my family, and also traveling to other parts of the world and studying there, and had the opportunity to get involved with a wonderful set of people, both at university, at X Prize, at Trickle Up, and now at Alphabet, who are co-conspirators in the mission to do moonshotting and have a great impact on the world. So if you're starting out in your career and thinking about what you want to do, I would say one of the things to think about is the kind of people you want to hang around with. Think about people who are positive, oriented, looking at the future, looking how they can impact the future and collaborate with others to do so. I really enjoy doing that with so many of my peers and teammates across the years, and now doing so with my team today at Alphabet. So thank you for having me, and I wish you the best. Take care.
Hello, and thanks for having me. My name is Ximena Hartsock, and I am the founder of Fund to Action. Fund to Action is a technology company based in Washington, D.C., and we create technology for civic participation. You may have not heard of us, but you certainly have heard of the organizations that use us. For example, we work with Nurses Association, Emergency Physicians, Restaurants Association, and all of those organizations that represent the frontliners during COVID. And they use Fund to Action to try to influence Congress to pass legislation that will support them. We also work with a lot of celebrities for Get Out the Vote efforts like Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, Taylor Swift, and many others. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Fund to Action later, but first I wanted to tell you about my story. So I was born in Santiago, Chile. My parents are 100% Mapuche. They moved from the south of Chile to Santiago to give us a better education and more opportunities. And being, Chilean with Indian descent is very difficult there. And while my parents shield us from, all of that discrimination that existed, still I knew really young that living in Chile wasn't going to be for me a path to a successful career or life. And with all of the drive that I had, that I wanted to be somewhere else. So as soon as I graduated college, I told my dad, even before doing any work, I told him that I wanted to move to the US. And he said, okay, go ahead. So I came here with $500 in my pocket, no connections, no family. And I did all of those jobs immigrants do. I was a nanny, I was a bartender, I was a house cleaner. And eventually, I saved enough money to start convalidating some of my credentials. And during that time, I applied to a job that I saw in the Washington Post. It said, we're hiring the aide of the teacher, and the job paid $10,000 a year. So I applied to that job because I thought, this will give me a door into education. And I worked really hard in that job, and it was a very entry job, not very well paid, and I still had to do all of my other part-time jobs with that. But my boss at the time was really good boss, and she gave me lots of opportunities and promotions over time. And so I was first the aide of the teacher, and then I became the aide, and then I got a promotion to become the coordinator of the aides, and eventually I started teaching. And when I became a teacher, I started seeing how my career was expanding, but I wasn't thinking ever about a vertical career. I was just trying to work hard. And during that time, the school principal of one of the schools that I worked at offered me a position as assistant principal. And then later on, the assistant superintendent of the region offered me a principalship job. So I was an assistant principal first and a principal later. And as a principal, I worked in a very diverse school. And we were able to improve dramatically, 20 percentage points, reading and math, in 1 year of standardized testing. And the city council member came to the school and congratulated us all. And he was very impressed with the work that we have done. So it happened that this city council member became the mayor of the city later. And his name is Adrian Fenty. And so he hired a new chancellor and told the new chancellor, here is a list of people that you should connect with. And she called me on her first day, actually, and she offered me a job as transition assistant during the education reform transition that started in 2007 in DC. So I joined that transition, and again, following the same mantra I had before, I worked as hard as I could, did the best I could, and I was promoted to assistant superintendent of schools. And I did the best I could again there, and the mayor later on promoted me to director of Parks and Recreation. And as director of Parks and Recreation, I did a lot of construction, which was a lot different than any other jobs that I did before, but prepared me for entrepreneurship, because construction is all about budgets and execution on timeline. So the product is what you build, and having a vision for the product from the beginning and taking it through, is key. And, that's basically what entrepreneurship is. I didn't know that at the time. So I built lots of dog parks and triangle parks and athletic fields. Actually, they're pretty quick to build some of those things. You can build in weeks, an athletic field. But I did also finish the construction of the Nationals Stadium. So if you've ever been to DC, and if you buy a hot dog and you see all of the vendors area, we built that portion. We can take credit for that. I learned a lot in that job. And later on, the mayor lost the election in 2010. So I joined the chancellor of schools in a new effort that it was an education reform organization to improve education for kids in the US. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to move into education advocacy, because I saw that for me, education was a path to a better career. And I have seen my friends who were waitresses with me before, or nannies, still in those jobs later on. The only thing that it was different between us, it wasn't intelligence or effort, it was education. So I thought, I want to do that. I want to work in making education accessible for more people. In doing that job is where the story becomes a little crazy, because I was talking to parents, I was traveling from city to city, trying to engage lawmakers and parents, and I realized they didn't talk. That parents did not know who were the lawmakers or how to contact them, and lawmakers were not used to hear from constituents. They were used to hear from organizations or from lobbyists. So I thought, it's gotta be an app for this. And it was no app. So I bought for $9 a domain called Phone to Action. And I said, this is 2012. I said that the adoption rates for smartphones now are really low, but they're going to improve dramatically in the next years. And people will tell me, poor people are never going to have a smartphone. But I thought, you know, just they will. Because when I was a principal, the first person that bought the iPhone 1 when it came out was a janitor, and it was an assistant teacher. So I thought, you know, people will buy the technology that they can afford. And so eventually everyone will be able to afford a smartphone. And here we are today with tremendous adoption of tech. So Phone to Action became a tremendous journey for me, super eye-opening, rewarding. We've been 8 years now in business. We closed the Series A funding for $5.1 million in 2016. We had a seed funding for $600,000 in 2014. But last year we got acquired by a private equity firm that really gave us a growth fund. So what that means is like they bought most of our stock. We still in the company, we still have stock in the company, the founders, but we were able to pay out all of our employees and all of our investors. And they were able to make money, you know, multiples of what they have invested in the beginning with. We're in the process now of acquisitions. So we're looking at companies and we're getting ready to announce some of those new acquisitions. But in that process, you know, I realized how little that I knew about technology, and definitely zero of entrepreneurship, and how much I could have benefited from a community. So when I learned about this conference, I was very excited about it, because the journey for me of tech entrepreneurship has been very, very lonely. And the lack of community, and not just networking, but also the role model. So the ability to look at, you know, somebody else's even mistakes and learn from them, or someone to bounce ideas with, have been absent in the area where we are. And so while we have some of that in Silicon Valley and other big cities where we live, in the DC metro area, is very, very little of that. And for me, it was almost non-existent. So my mission now is to, you know, share everything that, with a lot of humility, I can say I learned, and try to perhaps save some of the, you know, pain and time and headaches that I had over the years, and become perhaps a sounding board for those that may need it, or even just, you know, celebrate other successes. I think we are a community that is untapped. We have people at MIT now doing research on robotics that are Hispanic. We have unicorns that are Hispanics. We have lots of women in tech who are Hispanics. Certainly not enough, but definitely enough to celebrate. And so my you know, gratitude is with this conference and this community for welcoming me to it. It's never too late to join. I wish I would have known before, but count on me for anything that you need, and enjoy this conference. And thank you so much for hearing.